So, I know I'm a young upstart who's filming in a bedroom, but hear me out. I recently rewatched Inside Out, and as such, that means I now obviously have to make a video on it. Is that what YouTubers do? I'm still really new to this. Specifically, I'll be addressing the things I heard everyone complaining about when the movie came out. I am the Flighty Fairy. I flip from one fandom to another, and today I will be going back to Inside Out. The last video I made talked about a 2015 movie that received a lot of criticism, and this video I'll be talking about a 2016 movie that did really well, actually. Not that I'm surprised, I mean, I always knew it was going to be amazing. But before and after the movie came out, I heard a lot of people who got rubbed the wrong way by the premise, didn't understand certain things, or just didn't like it. And a lot of these things can be explained, so that's what I'm gonna do. Number 1, and I've heard this so many times, Joy is so annoying. It's actually really ironic because in the original draft of Inside Out, Joy was a lot more of a villain and the creators had to rewrite her part because they thought she might rub audiences the wrong way. Guess it wasn't enough. Joy's personality is one of optimism to a fault, bossiness, and a rather limited and narrow worldview, so it's easy to see why she wouldn't please everyone. But honestly, that is not the point of her character. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Joy's worldview is supposed to be skewed at the beginning. She's supposed to be overbearing so that she can learn in the end what is best for Riley. It becomes an almighty leap for her character when she finally learns to let go of the reins. And Joy's optimism makes it all the more thought-provoking because she isn't a sour, cranky, jaded character. She's happy and full of life and hope. Because of her good character traits, Joy is oblivious to the bad and comes to believe that because she is the only pleasurable emotion, she must be the only good one. A mistake that everyone in real life makes too, and that's kind of the whole point of the movie. So yes, Joy had to be as optimistic and as annoying as she was, otherwise the movie wouldn't have worked. This one is really more of a matter of opinion. If she was so cringy to you that you couldn't enjoy the rest of the movie, then sorry. It's honestly a well-worn formula that people should be expecting from Pixar by now. They kinda have a history of heavily flawed protagonists. Woody, Marlin, and Mr. Incredible, anyone? These characters always start out with a certain large character flaw, like being overprotective of their son or jealous of another toy, and the rest of the movie is spent with them trying to overcome this character flaw. I'm assuming that most of the people watching Inside Out are fans of other Pixar movies, so I'm kind of confused as to what they're complaining about, because if you don't like Inside Out because of Joy, you shouldn't like a lot of other Pixar movies. But this one is really up to taste. Let's move on to one that isn't. Why are there only 5 emotions? So yeah, it's true. Humans experience more than the 5 main characters of Inside Out. But what do you really expect them to do? If they add a couple more, then people will start complaining that they left others out, and pretty soon you have an entire flash mob in the mind of an 11-year-old. Think about how hard it was to balance these 5 characters with very intense personalities so that each one of them got an adequate amount of screen time and contributed something to the story. Adding another 1 or 2 would have thrown off the whole pacing of the story and probably made it seem overly packed. Also, I think they handled the lack of other emotions with the whole memories can have multiple blended emotions thing. They showed that as Riley grew up, she could have more complicated emotions, which manifested as memories having multiple colors in them or more than one emotion manning the console at the same time. So those other emotions that were left out could still be achieved, but in a different way. But how can the emotions feel things besides what they are? That doesn't even make sense. It's definitely fair to say that the creators stretched the rules of logic in order to create an enjoyable story. Like how all the emotions experience all the other emotions during the course of the movie, except for sadness, who never gets angry. Trust me, I've given this too much thought. But if you dig deeply, some of these can be explained, like Joy crying, for example. She is in the memory dump. These might be her last few minutes of life, and if she dies, Riley will never be happy again. Couple this with watching a bunch of happy memories turn to dust. But she's Joy, I hear you saying. Well, if anything would make the feeling of happiness feel sad, I think it would be the end of all happiness. For the record, I am not saying that joy and happiness are the same thing, but that's a conversation for another day. In other words, the emotions feel other emotions relative to themselves. How does it affect the future of their emotion? This is definitely not foolproof, but you have to remember that the emotions are the 5 main characters of the movie, and Having 5 main characters that only ever feel one thing is pretty boring. Like I said, perfectly cohesive world or enjoyable story. If any of you have seen the How Inside Out Should Have Ended video, then you will be aware of the next plot hole that people harp about. Why didn't Joy just send the core memories through the recall tube? This, I've come to believe, is not actually a plot hole, but I'm not going to go super in-depth here because another YouTuber who is much greater than I has already made a video on it, which I will link in the description. But in the end, it's all saved by a bad emotion. Hard as it may be to believe, I have actually heard this before, as well as many other gripes about sadness, calling her a bad emotion. Because it's not like the whole point of the movie was to say that there are no bad emotions or anything. Honestly, if sadness hadn't been the game changer in the end, this movie wouldn't really be worth watching. Because though everyone wants to be happy, it is important and healthy not to just shove sadness aside, but to experience it so that we are able to move on with life. Notice Riley's memories were always turning blue when sadness touched them, and then after a while she became depressed and unable to feel anything. This was because she was unable to heal, because she hadn't yet experienced the grief of leaving her home. Once she had done that, she was able to move on. I'm sure most of the people who saw the movie got the message, but I just needed to put it in here because I've seen too many things on the internet calling sadness a bad emotion, when the whole point of the movie was that there are no bad emotions. The last problem that people had was definitely the biggest and the one that I've heard over and over and over again. It is definitely the biggest problem people had with this movie. Riley doesn't control herself, she's controlled by her emotions. And my answer is both yes, kind of, and is that so unreasonable? For the kind of part, I will say that yes, she does make a lot of decisions based on her emotions, because that's the point of the movie. But it also shows that she does indeed have free will, and her emotions by no means control everything. When anger puts an idea in and says she took it, that implies that she could have either taken or rejected the idea, meaning that she does have free will outside of her emotions. We also see over and over and over again the mind reacting in ways that the emotions don't want it to, what with islands of personality crumbling, memories flying over the place, and the long-term memory tube sucking up joy and sadness, but not fear. There seems to be a sort of mind within a mind going on here, with the setting manipulating itself despite what the little people inside it want. I touched on this in my Why Does Sadness Change Memories video, which will be linked in the description if you want to hear more. But regardless of how it works, this is clearly the case, meaning that the emotions in headquarters by no means control everything. But even so, they do tell the girl what to do, and that was a sticking point for a lot of fans. A lot of people were disturbed that Pixar was implying that our emotions control us and we don't control our emotions. But even if what I just said wasn't true, is that so unrealistic? Like, obviously we can control our emotions to some degree, but to all of us who are past that age, could you when you were 11? I think it's safe to say that kids are ruled by their emotions. They make decisions based on their emotions. The reason portion of their brain is not fully developed yet. And as we see in the adult's brain in Inside Out, while the emotions still man the console, there's definitely a fair amount of reason mixed in with their ruling. To show a child that is ruled by her emotions isn't really outside of reality, and to show her having free will means that everyone should be happy, theoretically. Maybe these explanations helped, or maybe you still have the same opinion, but give this video a like if you enjoyed it. And if you like this channel, please subscribe. If you want to see me defend another movie that wasn't so much of a success, I will link my Why a Wrinkle in Time is a Good Movie video down below. Anyway, aside from would-be problems, I think we can all agree that Inside Out is a masterpiece created by one of the best movie-making companies in existence, so I hope you'll stick around if I ever decide to make another video on it. Later, Pixar fans.